All right, here's a solution to the touch the apple and the apple will eventually disappear challenge using lists. So the idea here is the player walks around. If it touches an apple and that apple is not in the master list of touched apples, then it's added to the list. When the player eventually, or the tester object eventually detects that the D key is hit, any apples that have been touched get destroyed using a script that does something really fancy. So let's give this a go. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to go inside our tester object, inside the create event, and we're going to give it this global list of apples. So I'm just going to call it global.apples. That's my list name. Equals ds list create. Okay, so now that list is empty, sitting there waiting to be used. Now, whenever the player collides with an apple, I have to grab the ID of that apple and check to see if it's in the list. Now, we know the ID of the apple is really other, which is the other object in the collision, dot ID. So that's what we're going to be using, right? So is the other ID in the list? So here we go. I'm going to basically just try to look for the position of that other ID. So ds list find index. So I'm going to try to look for the index position inside the global apples list, and I'm looking for the value other.id. Okay, so the other thing I just collided with, it has an ID value, right? Like 1,027,000. Is it already in the list or not? Then I'm going to quickly ask if position is -1. I'm going to get out of here. No, that's totally wrong. If the position is greater or equal to 0, that means, yes, it's somewhere in the list. Maybe it was in slot 17 or slot 10 or slot 6. It's already in the list. I want to get out of here. So I'm just going to exit out. Otherwise, I want to add this apple to the list. It's not in there yet. So, ds list, add. The list is called global.apples, and I want to add other.id. So now it's in the list. As the player touches it again, maybe one step later, it's going to ask, hey, go find the index position of other ID. That ID will be in the list. The position that gets sent back will be 0 or larger, and we're just going to exit out of here. So it won't get added a second time. Okay, so this is taking care of filling our list up. Okay, pretty good. To prove that it's working, we could always go to the draw event here, just so you can see it. And I could just quickly find out how big the list is, right? ds list size global.apples, and just let's print out this number here, string num, so we can keep track. So let's give this a little test and see how this grows. So as I touch the apples here, what you're going to see is 0, 1, 2. Now you'll notice I'm still colliding with the apple, but that ID is not being added to the list, right? So our logic does sort of work there with the lists. Shouldn't say sort of work. Definitely works. And that list is keeping track of IDs, right? And that list is growing. Now all I have to do is when I hit the D key, I want it to somehow go through that list and destroy each apple based on the ID. So this is the clever little routine here, right? Just to introduce you to some neat idea. So I go to tester, add event, key press letter D. Now the code here, I'm going to be using a script. Okay, so when I hit the D key, I'm going to say delete. I'm going to say delete. Let's call it destroy. Destroy first apple. Okay, that's a script name. So destroy first apple. Let's go make that script. Now, there's a reason I'm making this a script here. Destroy first apple. Now, if I want to put sort of proper docs here, I can call it destroy first apple. Destroys the first apple in the global.apples list. Now notice the script only that's going to destroy one apple. But then we're going to pull a clever little trick. So here we go. First, I'm going to find out, are there any apples in the list? So if ds_list size of global.apples, if it's 0, we just exit out of here. Okay, we don't even want to bother doing anything. There's nothing to delete. Okay, otherwise, we're going to do a little continuation here. We're going to delete the first apple. Now, to delete it, I need to know the ID of the first apple in the list. Well, I need to get the value of slot 0 because that's the first one. So I'm going to call it the ID. How about this? Some apple ID equals ds_list find value from the global apples, grab slot 0. I know there's at least one item in the list, or I wouldn't be down here. If there's at least one item, definitely slot 0 is filled because that is the first slot in the list. So I know I'm getting some value out. So I just got that value out, and it is the ID of some apple. Now, of course, we use our very clever with some apple ID, right? Because that is an ID number, like 1,028. With that instance, destroy. Okay, and that apple is going to destroy itself. Now, this is going to destroy the first apple every time I hit D. Let's just give this a test. Even though this isn't exactly what was asked for, just make sure this part's working. So if I hit D now, nothing's happening. But if I hit, let's say, 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples, 4 apples in my list, I hit D. There's the first one. And now I keep hitting D, and you'll notice, hey, nothing's happening, right? No more deleting. Okay, we have to figure out why. Here's the problem. I took that ID out, I destroyed that apple, but what I didn't do was, now that that apple is destroyed, I have to get that apple out of the list, right? I have to destroy slot 0. Or sorry, yeah, delete slot 0 out of the list. So let's do that part. It was trying to just continually delete that same slot 0 ID, right? So let's delete global.apples slot 0. Okay, so that one's gone. All the numbers shift up. My list just got a little smaller. Now when I test it out, one, two, three, delete, 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 delete. Nothing else happening. Nothing left in the list, right? Those IDs are being used and taken out. Now, that wasn't the problem. The actual problem was when I hit D, I want all the apples to delete themselves. Now, since we haven't learned about loops yet, which you'll learn about in another level or two, loops would be what we normally use, but here's another nice little idea we can use here, but it's just this. If the list was empty, I just exited. If the list wasn't empty, I kept going down, I deleted one out of the list, and look what I'm going to do. Destroy first apple. I call the same script again. It's going to run itself again. If the list is empty, it'll just stop. But if it isn't, it's going to do it again. It's going to grab apple 0, destroy it, take it out of the list, and then call the script again. Comes back up, runs the script again. This keeps cycling and cycling and cycling. The only time it ends is if the list is 0, that's when we exit. We don't get down here and we don't call the script again. This is a recursive call. Okay, and it's a topic called recursion. It's basically, I've set up a little loop here. You've done a similar kind of loop when you've made an alarm turn itself on again, and so the alarm goes on again. That was sort of recursive. Same idea here, but this is sort of real recursion. The script calls itself, and it keeps going until a condition lets it free itself, right, of calling itself. Now what we should see is lightning fast, woof, 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 woof. Everything calls itself. All apples we touch destroyed. I'm excited to give this a try. Let's hope it works. And let me touch a couple apples here. Bam, bam, bam. And I hit the D key. And all 6 apples should go. Poof. Gone. The list is clear. And of course you can keep doing it. You'll see how to do that same task using a loop. You'll probably think the loop is an easier method, but once you get used to programming and using this kind of idea of recursion, you'll actually like doing this. I mean, that was one line, and it basically created a loop for us, right? That kept on going. So that's a nice idea. Anyways, that's the destroy apple, and it introduced you to using the list a little more, and this nice idea of the recursive call. So hopefully you like that. Have fun trying to use this kind of stuff in your programs.